This happened to me about 4 years ago. I was 42 years old at the time and living with my girlfriend. Our house is located next door to a security company, and the building they occupy used to be the city bank way back in the day. Since it's an older section of the city, the streets are pretty narrow, as are the alleyways. There also isn't a ton of street lighting, so combine the darkness at night with the maze of alleys and you have a ton of hiding spots if you wanted to break into something. Like I said, the building next to my house was once the city bank, and the whole block was at one point the business district. But after the city expanded, the businesses moved and most of these old buildings became apartments and whatnot. This meant that police patrols are now less frequent in this area, and while the city isn't exactly running rampant with crime, what I am about to tell you should now come as no surprise. One day, I started noticing some of the stuff in our apartment was missing. I'd ask my girlfriend about the items and she'd swear up and down that she hadn't seen them either. My girlfriend does take medication and it makes her a bit absent-minded, so I always brushed it off as her misplacing things. I figured that the simplest answer was the best answer and I just left it at that. It wasn't until larger items around the house went missing that I got extremely suspicious. It's one thing to misplace something small like DVDs and stuff like that, but soon it was electronics and even money. To be fair, we did have a lot of friends that would visit the house regularly, and they would often come and go all hours of the night. That probably sounds really strange, but I am an extremely trusting person, so it never bothered me before to have friends drop by at odd hours. At least, it hadn't bothered me. Not until those events. I started setting house rules for my friends just to make certain that it wasn't any of them taking anything. I started only letting them visit at certain times and only when both myself and my girlfriend were home. If they wanted to stop over, they needed to call ahead and ask first. I would no longer allow them to just casually drop in. I also didn't allow my girlfriend to nap when they were over because I wanted both of us to keep them in our sight at all times. I'm sure this made them all extremely uncomfortable, and they most likely didn't understand what was causing this abrupt flip in my personality and behavior. I wasn't about to tell them either. If one of them was guilty, I didn't want him or her to know that I knew that things were missing. Beyond the changes in the visit times, I did my best to play everything else casual. We talked about all the normal stuff like sci-fi films, games, and work. All the while I studied each of them, waiting and watching for something to give them away. Maybe hoping one of them would mention something that they noticed was missing when I had not even told anyone about it. I guess I was waiting for a slip-up. A mistake. Something. This went on for a while, and sure enough, nothing had been taken while this was going on. I didn't want to think of it being one of my friends that was robbing me, but all the pieces seemed to fit. The only problem was I didn't have any evidence. I didn't want to start tossing around accusations at them because there was still a chance that I might be wrong. It was the following month and my girlfriend had just taken out $700 in cash from the bank and put it in my desk drawer in my office. I think it was rent money that she was going to loan a friend or something like that. I didn't want to risk the possibility that it would get stolen too, so I set up an infrared camera inside my office, ran it to a VCR, and I had it set to record that night. I didn't tell anyone about the camera, not even my girlfriend. I also didn't want to risk it being visible, so I bolted it to the floor, aimed it up toward the desk, and I hid it behind some junk inside my office. My girlfriend and I both went to sleep, and I felt confident that I had set the perfect trap. The next morning, I went inside my office and I noticed that the TV was on. I walked back to our room and I asked my girlfriend if she had been in the office. She said yes. I woke up and I couldn't fall back asleep, so I went in there to watch a movie. I stormed back into my office and moved the junk aside to see the mess of wires where the camera was. It was gone. The bolts had been pulled out as if someone had used something to pry the camera from the floor. I opened my desk drawer and found that the envelope that contained the $700 was now empty. I rewound the tape from the VCR and watched the video it had captured. I could see my girlfriend come into the office and use the remote control to turn on the TV. All I could see after that was the movie that she was watching on the TV, now recorded onto the tape. I wanted to be angry with her, and for a brief second I thought maybe she had done it intentionally, but none of this was making any sense. She didn't know I had set up a camera, and even if she did, why would she steal her own money? I stormed outside, frustrated. I didn't know what to believe or who to trust. I remember thinking how ironic it was that I lived next door to a security company, and here I was completely convinced that I was being robbed somehow just a few feet from the building. And then I noticed it. A camera mounted to the side of the building, and aiming at the sidewalk that ran in front of my house. I went inside the building and spoke to two of the security officers inside. Excuse me, can you tell me if the camera you have out front has a view of my house? The security officer turned the monitor around and pointed to the camera's view. Sure enough, I could see my house clearly. I explained what was happening and what my suspicions were, and he was able to download the footage from the previous night onto a thumb drive for me. I went back home, went into my office, and I started to review the footage. I sat there for hours, afraid to fast forward, afraid I might miss something subtle. By now, the footage was getting dark as it was approaching sunset. The camera's infrared turned on and lit everything in an eerie monochrome glow. I just stared at the monitor and waited. I could now see the glow of the TV in my office from when my girlfriend woke up and went to watch a movie. And then, I got the creepiest chill of my life as a tall figure came out from the shadows and slowly approached the house. He had a hooded sweatshirt over his head and his hands were in his pockets. He stopped just short of reaching the house and just seemed to be staring. I can't be 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure he was staring at the TV light in the window where my office is. He then walked around the back of the house, and I lost sight of him for a couple hours. When he did emerge again, he slowly crept back toward the front of the house. I could see he was carrying something in his hand. It was my camera. I stopped the video and I went outside to the back of my house. I began checking the windows and almost immediately, I noticed pry marks on one of the window ledges. It looked like he had taken a screwdriver and had pried the window open to enter the house. I could see from the volume of the marks that this had been the way he had been getting inside again and again. A sickening thought then entered my mind. He had come inside the house that night and waited for my girlfriend to fall asleep before going into the office to take the money. Even more disturbing was that there was no way for him to have known about the camera or where the money was, unless he had come inside the house earlier and had been watching us while he hid. It's also possible that he had been going through the house while we were gone and learning the layout of the rooms, possibly even sleeping there. It still gives me the creeps.